Hey guys, this is Jennifer. Welcome to our second Dallas user group webcast. Today we have the awesome opportunity to have Mike Fitzmaurice talk to us about SharePoint adoption and how that can be increased with forms and workflows. So Nintex is a wonderful sponsor of our Dallas user group, and so it's awesome that we've got to have Mike join with us twice now. He's come out and spoke at the user group, and now we have him on this webcast. So super excited to hear what he has to say. We are going to get the presentation started. There's a questions and answer panel. So if you want to post your questions throughout the presentation, at the end I'll be collecting those and asking Mike. I'll be coming back online and asking Mike. And so we're going to hand it over to Mike. As always, you can find out about the SharePoint user group at dfwsharepoint.com. And we have our meetings the third Tuesday of every month in the Microsoft offices at Las Colinas. So we're happy you joined us today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike and let you get started.
Cool. Let's see, before you go away and mute yourself completely, Jen, are you seeing my screen? And B, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see your screen.
Outstanding. So I am here in a cordoned off quiet room in Houston. We're in the middle of SharePoint Tech Fest. I'm actually here in the room with Eric Schups. Everybody say hello to Eric.
Howdy, everybody.
And he's going to provide color commentary or ask me questions to either trip me up or he might be asking questions with an ear towards empathy for the audience. As Jen mentioned, put in your questions whenever you'd like. I will answer them en masse at the end of the whole thing, but cue those things up. And I sort of, on a dare, said, can we make the whole thing a PowerPoint-free zone? And I think we can do this. I'm going to have one obligatory slide up here with our corporate logo and a couple of URLs. So if you like what you see, please visit www.nintex.com later, and if you want to talk, or if you want to get a question fielded, we actually have our salespeople field incoming questions. So if you just have a question, but you really don't want to be contacted by a salesperson, that's okay. This is still the email that you would send a question to. All righty. Well, I said no PowerPoints, so let's get that out of the way, and let's come over here. Now, the title was Enhance User Adoption with Workflow and Forms. And the implicit assumption there is this is a SharePoint site. It's a place where stuff is put. We'd actually like to use workflow in order to turn it into a place where stuff is done. So not just a place where you put your stuff, a place where you and expect other people to go there in order to get it. I want to actually have things done to it when I drop it in here and move things around and so on. And we can illustrate this in a couple of different ways, but I figured since we have almost an hour together, why don't I just build an app in front of you, and we'll keep making it better and better as time goes by. And I'll show you some other things you can do with Nintex, but I actually think one of the big appeals to what we offer is that this is technology you can use. It's designed to be used certainly by professionals, but also by relative amateurs or people that are relatively new to the environment. We love everybody, and we think everyone should have the chance to automate processes to some extent. Some people will be better at it than others, but everybody should be able to do some basic stuff. In fact, I'll start with something really fundamental, and I think every organization would have to do something like this. So this is a leave request scenario, and right now it's completely undone. I've got a calendar here that I would really, really like to reflect who's going to be gone at any given time. And over here, I've saved myself just a tiny little bit of time. This is the only thing I've done in advance. I've set up a list in advance, and let's go into this list. because this is not a presentation about how to do lists in SharePoint. So I built a list in advance, and this list has got, title, what type of leave do you want to take, when are you leaving, when are you coming back, and maybe describe what's going on. That's it. Other than that, I have done nothing yet. So here's what I want to do before going any further. Let's give this, I'm going to turn this into a real business process. I'm going to do it in a matter of, I'm going to do it in front of your eyes. In fact, let's do one part of it really, really easy. I want to turn these into nice looking forms. So I'm going to go and click this button that says Nintex Forms, and I'm going to build a form in one click. That's all it's going to take. I'm going to refresh this just so that you can see that again. There we go. That's a form in a click. Now, a couple of things to note. Thing number one is we're obviously looking at the list's metadata to put the form together, and we're also looking at a template. And we built that in a matter of seconds so that you can now pick it up and change anything you want. In fact, my guess is you'll definitely want to change something. So you won't want our logo here on your form. That's okay. You can actually change the template and have your logo on everything, but we expect you to do that. There are a number of stock controls here that you would expect with any form environment. There are some that are SharePoint specific, like content types and external data and manage metadata and all that. But we've gone ahead and looked at all the data types and pre-bound columns and then drag and drop them onto the screen and given them cascading style sheet tags. So if a basic standard form meets your needs, you can just click publish and you are done. Now that's nice in and of itself, but I'd like to do one little, that's a form in one click. Other than giving you a little guided tour, I haven't really done anything other than one click. But I'll tell you what, let's do one other thing. This whole description area, I don't want it to show up unless someone has chosen the leave type to be other. So how about I go ahead and I select this control and maybe even this one as well, and I choose Add Rule. And I call this Hide Unless Other. It's a formatting rule. I can also have validation rules. And the condition is pretty basic and straightforward. I'm going to say something to the effect of, in fact, I don't have to, I can just build it this way. So if leave type is not equal to other, there. I don't have to remember anything. I can just point and click, and then the result should be hide. That's it. That's all I need. All right. We're done. Let's publish this. Actually, you know something? Eric, do you like mobile?
Do I like what?
Mobile. You like mobile applications?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I see a laptop right next to you, but
I spend a lot of time on my phone.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I think you should be able to get this form on your phone without doing the work a second time. And so I'm going to do one extra click. And this is going to make an alternate rendering of the exact same form so that it'll look good in a mobile browser. Now, everything has got the same rules. In fact, it's the same control. They're sized differently, they're arranged differently, but everything you did to change any of the properties on anything, it is the same form. Again, we call them layouts as opposed to views because it's just a rearrangement to fit a different form factor. Now, here's the other thing. This is for a mobile browser, so I'm assuming that if you're thinking from a SharePoint point of view and you're going to the list and you want to add an item, you'll get an index form for it. But if you're really just thinking about tasks and submitting forms and such, we actually have custom mobile apps. And there's not a lot of fancy rendering because the app is going to do the work. But I'm going to show you several different ways to submit these requests. All I'm getting at here is I could submit this through a normal browser or a mobile browser or a mobile app that is either a tablet or a phone. I just did.
And is that an in-text app they would download from one of the app stores?
Yeah, and in fact, if you want, you can even create a custom branded version of that, specifically packaged with the forms and the tasks that you want. But the whole idea here is, other than me adding that rule, which didn't really take much work at all, it was just fill in the blanks, I did 4 clicks. I got 4 layouts of one form. And if all I really wanted was a browser thing, that was a single click. And now I'm going to close this and make it go away, because we don't need to come back to it for a bit. If I click New Item here, you'll see what it looks like. And sure enough, there's no description section unless, oh, you know something? I don't have another category here. The description is never going to show up. I ought to change this a little bit, don't you think?
Or change the rule, eh?
Or change, well, yeah, or change the rule. I'll tell you what I'm going to, yeah, I probably really should change that. Let's change this to allow for an option called Other. It's just the right thing to do. Scroll down just a little bit.
Form doesn't want to scroll, does it?
No, it doesn't. Ah, here we go. There. Leave type. Hey, I lost my remote desktop session for a moment, but did you lose my audio as well? Lyman, Jen, anyone else there on the call?
No, we can still hear you.
Okay, it was just my remote desktop session then. Good. That would have been far worse. Okay, good. Now let's go back here and let me show you a new item. And this time, let's choose Other. And there you go. The description shows up. I'll show this to you on a mobile device in a few minutes. In fact, we'll submit the request from a mobile device. But while we wait, let's build a process out of all of this. Because I want, at the very, very least, that if it gets approved, it should update that team calendar. So now I'm going to go back to the list ribbon, and I'm going to go here to Workflow Settings. And I'm going to choose Create a Workflow using Nintex. And you know what I could do? I could actually cheat. If there's a template already, I'm just going to grab the template and bam, it's ready to go. Actually, no, the person who built the template left 2 things undone because she or he figured you would want to bind this to a particular column of your own, and she didn't know in advance which column you would want. So she left exactly 2 things left undone, but they show up here with warning icons. Otherwise, this thing is ready to publish and you're off to the races. Now, I could use this, but that would be cheating. I'm going to build this from scratch. I'm going to build this from nothing. I'm going to build this from a blank slate. Now, here's a big difference that a lot of people just take it for granted. But you see, this workflow already exists. It has a beginning, it has an end, and in the middle, this is where we decide what happens next. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the toolbox a little bit wider for convenience sake. But I'm going to say, well, okay, very first thing, let's send out a notification message. I think it'd be nice if you submit a request. It would be good for us to tell you we're working on it. It didn't just go into a black hole. SharePoint picked this up and is working on it. It isn't just dead in a list until somebody decides to go look at it. So I will do that. And if I hover over it, by the way, this is validating itself in real time. It's drawing itself, too. I dragged and dropped it into place, and I've got a new place to put something either before or after it, and it's telling me what's missing. I need to assign this to somebody, and I need to give it a subject. I at least need to do that. And now the next thing I want to do is assign a task to their manager to approve it or reject it. Now check this out. When I do that, I'm automatically drawing the alternate paths depending on which way it could go. Now this seems deceptively simple and obvious, but weirdly enough, pretty much no one else does it. They make you draw things onto a blank page and then do all the connections yourself. And they don't necessarily auto-arrange it or make it easy to read or anything along those lines. In fact, check this out. Right now we have reject and approve as the two possible options. Why don't I throw in a third option? Because it could be, I actually know a consulting firm that really works this way. That, where is it? There's approve, there's reject. Let's add a third outcome. Third outcome could be ask your peers. The basic idea is everybody shares in the responsibility, which means if your coworkers are willing to cover for you, and take all the time off you want. Now, that could be a weird way to run a company, but again, it works for some companies. And look, we've drawn a third path automatically. So that's kind of handy and useful. Let's, oh, right, if we approve something, we should update that calendar, right? So somewhere right there, create item. Now, create item is accurate. If you're a SharePoint person, you know that a calendar is a special type of list, and a list is made up of items. But I might want to show this process design to somebody that is not a SharePointer. So how about we change this from create item to add to calendar. In fact, here, instead of assign flexible task, how about we say get manager approval. Make this thing a bit more self-documenting. All right, you know, we're getting really close to being done. I think I want to start configuring some of these things. So let's go here. And there's very little for me to do. I need to make sure this goes to somebody. And I could hard code. I can look for anybody I want. I can hard code an email address. I can look stuff up in Active Directory or inside SharePoint itself. But you know what? I'm just going to do this. Whoever initiated the workflow, let's take that. And then the subject, let's make this your item properties. Let's see, you asked for a particular type of leave, right? So your leave type request, and I'm going to say it was received. Now here's the other fun part. I can send you this notice over email or over instant messaging, or actually you can tell me what you'd prefer, and I can elect to respect your preferences. There. And notice on now the warning icon's gone because we're validating this in real time. If all the warning icons are gone, then the workflow is going to publish and it's going to work. It'll do exactly what you asked. What you asked will hopefully make sense. I can't stop you from asking for crazy things, but I can certainly make sure that it registers and executes correctly. Now here under Get Manager Approval, it's almost as easy. Emphasis on almost. You see, I kind of want this to go to whoever your manager is. Well, it just so happens that we have the concept of roles, and one of them is manager. So I can simply say, do a manager lookup. By default, we're going to get that from Active Directory, but if you want to replace that with a component that does it by looking at it in the user profile store, your HR system, all of it's a pluggable component. All right, let's allow this to be delegated, and let's spend a moment now so we can spend a lot less time later and build up a nice description here out of text. So initiator's display name as requested. Let's see, leave type, as in vacation time, sick time, and so on. Starting, start date, and returning. Let's see. Yeah, try to spell returning correctly. End date. There we go. All right. Approve, reject, ask your peers. Let's get rid of ask your peers. I don't really want that. And if you're asking multiple people, if several people could have approved this, we give you lots of choices. You could just take the first response you get or make them vote or say it has to be unanimous or just a simple majority, or you can add some extra criteria. So if it isn't, if It could be a partial no or a unanimous yes, or all those combinations are there. Same thing with, task name. I'm going to take an extra moment and put this in here, because if you're looking at a list of tasks and they all say workflow tasks, that's going to be kind of annoying, right? I don't want you to be annoyed, Eric. So what we're going to do here instead is build up the name of the task out of metadata so you can see it in a list, make some sense of it. And I will just, again, go back to the metadata well and choose leave type request from and the name of the person submitting the request. There. All done. Well, sort of. That takes care of the task. You don't have to do a lot of extra steps in the workflow to get things like notification messages and escalation rules. They're all just configuration options here, and the defaults are usually right. So for example, here's the notification message that can go out. Now I could do this over email. Again, I'm going to let it be, some people don't want any notifications. I'm going to say whatever you want, that's what we want. So you want to get this over a pop-up in Skype for Business or Link or what have you, fine. If you prefer to get it as an email message, or if you prefer an SMS text message, we do this too. Let's see. Here, under instead of response required, well, okay, that's correct. But again, if you just see that in the subject line of an email, you're probably not going to be a happy guy. Well, I went to the trouble to give that task a nice name. I'm just going to reuse that name. And down here in the instructions that we're giving somebody, same deal. I'm going to go ahead and throw in that description I just built, so I don't have to do it again. We love reuse. Now, reminders, be nice to rattle their cage. So how about we say every 4 hours, just during business hours, up to 4 times, we say that it won't approve itself. And what won't approve itself? Again, I don't want to retype diddly, so here we go. And for that matter, again, if we're going to hassle you, we should probably tell you why you're being hassled. So once again, I will insert the body text that explains what the problem is. And again, we'll send you that notice any way you would prefer. Escalation rules, same deal. I can say after 3 days, send it to your manager, or force it to autocomplete. Like, in other words, you've got 3 days to reject it, or else it's auto-approved, or vice versa, or any of a number of those things. All right, we're all done. Let's get out of here. Notice the icon no longer has a warning on it.
So we have a question that's appropriate to what you're doing.
Sure.
Here. You've made a number of modifications to these workflow steps.
Yes.
Odds are good that you may want to reuse some of that capability later, like remember some of these settings when you've done a task or this type of workflow. Is there any way to make some of this stuff reusable?
Oh, totally.
Store it for later
Actually,
retrieval?
I'll tell you what. I was going to wait till later, but since you've asked this question in context and been so nice about it, we can do it right now. So what I would normally do is build this workflow and then run it so you can see it in action. But the fun thing about this is, if I were to actually use this, the Human Resources Department would be all over me because I'm going rogue. This doesn't involve them at all. That's not a happy thing. I actually want to be nice to Human Resources, but I do not want to approve it for my team calendar and then do a separate approval just for their software. That's just annoying. I don't want to do dual data entry and keep everything in sync. Well, that's okay. You know why? Because we're big on integration, and I can call the web services exposed by the HR software quite easily, or talk to its database, or talk to API. I've got lots of ways. But if I do that, you're a developer. I'm a developer. We know that soap is not something you wash yourself with. Well, it is sometimes, but not always. We know that rest is not something you do when you're weary. Well, it is sometimes. But in other words, But somebody who's doing this, a manager could be building this, or a manager's assistant could be building this workflow until we ask them to call a web service. That just raised the bar really high. I don't want them to have to do that. So I'll tell you what, we're talking about reuse. And I know the person asking the question was saying, I've come up with a clever way to send a task to somebody. Can I reuse my own work? I'm going to help you with that too. But I'm going to say, how about if a couple of weeks ago, somebody built this little workflow called Get Leave Balance. And this Get Leave Balance workflow contains 3 steps. Look up the user's employee ID in the human resources software, and then call a web service. And this is, it's geeky, but the web service brings back a block of XML. So parse the XML and pluck out the one number we care about. Now, if we do that, and if we give this workflow some parameters, like the name of the employee, or the login details on the employee, and the type of leave we want to look up, we can output the hours and give them what they want. So what I basically did a couple of weeks ago is I built this workflow, and I did that so that I can reuse it. So over here in this category, you see, remember the name of the workflow is Get Leave Balance? This is that workflow. I'm just going to take this and drag it into position here. And now I'll configure it. And notice it's going to ask me to give it 2 things, the name of the employee. And again, we're going to go back to the metadata well, and I've got, there it is, there's the initiator. Leave type, well, they were kind enough to tell us what kind of leave they wanted to take in that form. So there, I just need to put the result someplace. So let me create a variable to hold it. I'll call it hours. And it's a number. There we go. Close. And there.
So not only have you created what's essentially a workflow and saved it as a reusable component, but you can pass data to the workflow, to that action, and retrieve it from the action in the context of another workflow.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So I could save this workflow as a template. In fact, I'm going to when I'm done, so if someone else in another site wants to do one just like this, they can. But it's not just about saving the entire workflow. You can actually save pieces of a workflow and reuse them like building blocks. Now, here I come over, since I've gone ahead and retrieved somebody's balance, I think it'd be fun to tell the manager this. So I'll say HR reports a balance of, if you're going to make a decision to approve or reject somebody, might not be a bad idea to give them as much information as possible. So it just so happens here under workflow variables, there's hours. There. And that shows up in the nasty gram we send you if you don't answer it in a certain amount of time, or in the escalation path if your manager has to get involved or anything like that. It's all there. So yeah, I reused a piece of a workflow, and I'm just about ready to go. Oh, right, forgot to set this up. I need to add an item to a calendar. Now remember, we know we're in SharePoint. We're connected to the site at all times, so I know which lists you've got. In fact, I can do this in a SharePoint site elsewhere in the collection, or in a different collection, or even in another farm, or even up in Office 365. We'll connect together just about anything if you want. But I'm going to put this in Leave Calendar. And so we just interrogated the metadata on that list, and I know that there are 3 properties we must provide: the title, the start time, and the end time. So the title, I want the calendar entry to have the name of the person who's going to be gone. So that's easy. The start time and the end time, I should get that from the form. And let's see, start date and end date. There we go, we're done. Well, there is one last thing, I suppose. It would be a very polite thing to tell them what the outcome is. I don't want to redo all that work, so I'm copying the notice I sent them at the beginning and just pasting it here and pasting it here, and I'm going to change just 2 things. Instead of it was received, I'll say it was approved. And over here, under send notification, if it is, remember, actually let me back out of this. If you forget, one of the nice things about us drawing it for you is that if you forget, you're probably spending all of your time thinking about what happens if it's approved and what should happen next. You're going to see a big gaping hole in your workflow where you should have remembered what to do if it was rejected. That's a really handy thing. Now, here, instead of it was received, it was rejected is the right thing to say, but that's probably not enough. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say it was rejected by, and where is it? Last task respondent display name. It's a fancy way of saying approver, or in this case, rejector, with the following comments. And where's all approver comments? I'll even bring them along in rich text. Now, because that could get long, probably longer than an SMS text or an instant message, I'm going to force that to be email. There, we are done. We're going to give this workflow a name, and we're going to call it Yo Approve My Leave Request. And we'll have it execute automatically when we receive a new request or a new item in that list.
So we have a question relating to the configuration of the workflow.
Sure.
And someone's asking, there was an on behalf of option on the configuration dialog. Do the emails and leave balances need to be conditional and check the on behalf of, or does it matter?
They could. I mean, it's really up to you. When I built the list, I added an extra column in the list called on behalf of. It's not the configuration of the workflow itself. It's just I envisioned when I built the list that someone might want to submit a request for someone else. And if I wanted to pay attention to that, then yes, I would absolutely make this workflow a little bit more clever and check to see if that was empty. I'd probably set a variable called requester or something like that to be either the initiator, if it's blank, if on behalf of was blank, or on behalf of person. But yes, totally. That's an excellent question. I'm going to click publish and submit. Now this should take a couple of seconds. Shouldn't take more than a couple of seconds. And there, we're done. Because we were validating it in real time all the time, so we told the SharePoint workflow engine that, yeah, we validated this already, and it generally trusts us. All right, good. I'll leave this up because we might want to come back to this and make it better in a minute. But let's submit a request. In fact, now I said we could create a new item and submit it this way, right? But I did promise mobile. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's go over here where we're looking at, and you can attest to everybody, we are actually using my real mobile phone.
He did just press the button on the screen.
Yeah. So if I'm faking it out, I'm doing a really good fake job. And I'm refreshing to make sure that my leave request form shows up here on my phone.
And this is the Nintex mobile app that they would download from the, in this case, iOS from the App Store.
Correct. We have them for for Android. We have them for Windows Phone, and that's both for tablets and for phones. And in the case of Windows, we have one for Windows Phone, and we have one for Windows 8/8.1. Yes, of course, we'll do a universal app at some point down the road. And as soon as this refresh finishes, we should see the option to ask for leave. It'll show up in a moment, and if for some reason I run into a little bit of, there we go, leave requests. Now I can show you a fancier form later, but the title here will just be vacation. Type is annual leave. Notice how description is not there because the rules still apply here too. Start date, let's make that tomorrow. End date, let's make that, yeah, end of the month. And that's good. That's enough. All right, notice how it's in and out box at the moment? It's not anymore, but we actually queued it up. This works offline. So as long as I had the form downloaded already, and by default they update every 15 minutes, I can fill out forms or respond to tasks or do any of those things, and then the next time I'm online it'll all
So instead of burning your cell data, next time you're connected to Wi-Fi,
yeah.
you could synchronize.
Oh, yeah, and you could totally ask for that. Or if you're going somewhere where connectivity is terrible, you don't have to be dependent on connectivity to get something done. Now, I'll talk more about our mobile apps later. I just wanted to do that to show it can be done. Now, let's refresh this because I am sincerely hoping. Oh, there it is. There it is. It's vacation. We're there. Now, let's watch this workflow unfold. I don't need to execute this. In fact, oh, it is running because here's the very first thing that should happen. Whoops. There. My request, it was received. My annual leave request was received. That's a happy thing. Now, I want to track this workflow as it runs. So I'm going to go here to View Workflow History. And there's my Yo approved my leave request workflow. And here's where it is. It's a nice visual picture. There, we've got, this already happened. You can see when, and it already looked up my leave balance, and that's already been taken care of. And now I'm hovering over this. If it's in yellow, it's happening right now. If it's in green, it happened, and happily so. And it's with a guy named Brett Campbell. Now, I'm logged in here as a fictional guy named Eden Stafford, but if I slide over here ever so slightly, I am logged in here as Brett. Brett is Eden's manager. So, and I notice here I have a task that's been assigned to me regarding this item. I can go look at the request if I wanted to, but I was nice enough to have put all the descriptive information right there in front of me. Which is great. Well, why don't I just go ahead and use it? Eden wants annual leave starting on the 28th from returning the 30th. HR says he's got 80 hours. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to go ahead and reply. Oh, right. I could go ahead and click on the link and fill out the task and all that, but you know, I haven't made a nice looking form for that yet, so I don't want to do it. Instead, I'm going to use this feature, which allows me to just reply to the message. And I'll say, okay. I could say approve or approved or yes or anything we agree to accept. There, it's gone. And this will get picked up by an email-enabled list, and it'll get auto-processed, and the task will be completed on the person's behalf. Now, in a few moments, I should see if I slide back over here, acting as Eden, I could refresh this and I'll see that it's moved on and probably gone into the approval path. While we wait, let's do one more thing. I'm going to open up a browser as Brett. And Brett, today, if he comes over here, notification preferences. Brett likes getting email. But let's say Brett wants something a bit more quick and responsive. He'd prefer instant messaging. We're going to make use of that. Let's go back over here. Email's non-instantaneous. It could take up to a minute, maybe slightly longer, for me to get my pop-up message saying that, hey, it's been approved. And while we wait, we'll get a pleasant interruption in a few moments. While we wait, this task that we assigned Brett, the reason I didn't click on the links to open it up is that it would have been boring. It just would have been a normal SharePoint task. I want to build a form for that. So let's open this up. By the way, as soon as we do get that pop-up message, I will have built a real app in front of you and run it and seen that it worked, all while we're doing this. No, I started from nothing other than a list that already existed. No tricks, nothing pre-canned or anything like that. Here under Edit the Task Form, here's that interruption I was talking about. It was approved. We're still going to continue with this. I want to make the form for this task look good. And again, I can do that with one click. We'll look at the metadata around the task, we'll look at the template, and we'll build you a form. Now, there's something deceptively fun about this. Yes, you see the normal fields you would expect to see in a task, like the decision. It's labeled as outcome, but that's it. A place to put in comments. You would expect that as well. But you know what? There's this other thing down here that says list columns, and there's this other part that says workflow variables. This form knows that it's part of a workflow. And if I come down here, here are all the properties about the workflow variables and the list items and everything else. The point is, if I sent you a request to approve something, wouldn't it be nice if I sent you the something at the exact same time?
Instead of the link to go look at the something.
Correct.
Causing me an extra click.
Yes. Well, an extra click and a wait and a window popping up and all that other kind of stuff. It's not just annoyance. There are practical reasons for this. So we bring along for the ride all the details about the thing that you're approving. By the way, these can be made read-write. So if for some reason you need to have somebody respond to a task and update the source item, you can do that. It's totally a thing. And again, this works just fine from a mobile browser or a mobile device. So I'm going to say all four of these. By the way, if you want to have a very specific layout for a very specific OS, you can totally do that too. But here, let's go ahead, save. Yep, save and close. Save the task, republish the workflow so it now has a form embedded in it. By the way, I can export this to XML and deploy it somewhere else, and I'm bringing the forms along with it.
So you could take it from a development environment to a production environment.
Correct.
So this brings up a question we had at the outset, which is, when you went to edit that form, it gave you an option to edit in InfoPath.
Yeah.
Now we know that InfoPath is not receiving any updates or changes from
Correct.
Microsoft going forward. So with this ability to do these one-click forms and just easily deploy forms, what advice can you give those people who have InfoPath for Business processes that are looking for a future path forward?
Well, I always think that if you're building a business process solution, you should have the process logic living in a workflow and the UI logic living in a form. And if you built everything into the form, including the logic work, it's probably a good time to rethink that form anyway. We've got support for InfoPath, still do. Will for a while longer. It's like long before we had Nintex Forms, we had support for InfoPath. We did that because customers want it. We still do it because some customers want it. But we think that if you're building forms for processes, for tasks, forms for starting a process, forms for list items, and so on, it's a whole lot more productive, especially if mobile's involved, to use Nintex Forms. So if someone is looking for something new, I would say two things. One, Nintex Forms is really nice. But the second thing is Nintex Forms is designed to reward you for breaking things up into manageable chunks. So I've got one form right now for submitting the request and a different form for approving it. But the two forms are actually different by design. And if I didn't do it that way, you'd want to have one form with two views on it anyway. It's actually more work to do that.
So users who already have an investment in InfoPath can continue that current investment, layer workflow on top of it with their existing forms, and then going forward start to replace InfoPath forms with Nintex forms so that they have the mobile capabilities and all that stuff built in.
Totally. Now, by the way, this was we were watching a workflow evolve. Let's go ahead and, there's the path the workflow took from start to finish. And if you really, really like to see it as an audit trail, I'm happy to show it to you as an audit trail. We even kept copies of the email trail. Now, with that, let's go back to here. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to resubmit. Oh, by the way, there's the entry in the calendar. Let's go ahead and just resubmit this workflow. And I'm going to click Start. When you start it manually, you get yet one final form. By default, we just give you a page that shows you the workflow. But you could actually collect more stuff and have a custom form for that too. Okay, here's my notice that it was received, and it's moved along. Now, a couple of things are going on. Let's go over to Brett. Brett has said that he likes instant messages now. So if I click here, I'll see this is an automated message. Are you available right now? You know what? I'm going to say yes. Well, if that's the case, Eden would like to take this time off. Is this okay? Fine. I'll approve it. Thanks. Oh, can we have some comments? Have fun? I don't know. I actually should have said I don't need comments if it's affirmative. You can do that. Okay, this has been done. We do that. And here's the notice that it was approved. But let's do this one more time, and let's do this properly because we want to show you the form, right? So once again, let's issue this. I'm just going to ignore the pop-up. Now I can come back over here, and I will see that I've got that request. This time I'm going to ignore it. Now, it'll fall if you take too long, or you say no, or you ignore it, it's going to turn into an email exchange, just like the very first thing I did. See?
So wait a minute. You set that user preferences to be instant message, but they didn't respond, so it automatically falls back to email.
Yep. So here it is, and now here, if I click here to respond to the task, this is going to be my nice, clean little, there, approve, reject. You want to see all the details about the request? There they are. But now, yes, of course, I love HTML forms, etc., etc. But we like some mobile, right? So there's my mobile phone. Here's a window into a Microsoft Surface running Windows 8. And let me refresh and show my tasks.
So this is also an app that they can download from the Microsoft Store.
Correct. And here, by default, these things, if you want to, you can, you have the option to, do semantic zoom, group them, and so on. Same thing works with forms. You can zoom in and out based on categories and such. But I was looking at my tasks, and there, this is that annual leave request. And sure enough, I'm asked to approve or reject. I'll approve. And what is it I'm approving or rejecting? There are the details. Okay, I'll submit it.
So while that's submitting, we've had a question about, so one of the audience members liked the ability to have the portability of being able to export the workflow, take it into another environment and promote it. But is it possible to bring the SharePoint artifacts along the list and with it, or they would have to do that? Pre-stage those lists?
We actually have examples of how to package the whole thing up in a WSP with the list definition on our community site. So community.nindex.com or connect.nindex.com. It's the same. The two URLs go to the same place. All kinds of downloadable and example type content and forums and discussions and people helping people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can totally do that. That said, if you make most of the columns association columns, they'll be automatically generated when you bind the workflow. So you can solve it in a SharePoint way, or you can solve it in a workflow way. We're happy with both. All right, let me see. Yep, okay. I got approved. That's a nice thing. So you basically saw me in less than an hour, realistically speaking, less than 45 minutes, build an app, improve it, connect it to the HR system, build custom forms for both submission and for approval. And on top of all of that, I made the whole thing mobile without really, I can develop, but was I behaving like a developer through any of this?
No.
Just behaving like a configurator type or a power user or something like that.
So one of our attendees didn't see you respond to the email to approve the task. Can you submit that again and use lazy approval?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, one more time. Let's go ahead and run yo approve my leave request yet again. First thing it's going to do is tell me it was received. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go over here, and again, Brett is being asked if he's free. I'm going to say no, I am not free. Leave me alone. Which means in a moment we'll get an email. Now, person wanted to see lazy approval, so you do not want me to click on this task and complete it.
Can you complete the task by just replying to the email?
Totally. Let's do that. So let's click reply, and I could type approve or approved or okay or yes, or you actually can edit the lookup table. And I'll hit send.
Wait, so does that mean you can handle multilingual scenarios by adding terms that they could respond to, map to, and approve or reject?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a full-blown multilingual thing because we kind of do multilingual the same way SharePoint does, scope to a site. But, for example, we're in Texas. There's a fairly large Spanish-speaking community, and we're right on the border with Mexico and so on. So let's assume that that it's a desirable thing to make sure that if someone responds C or something like that, that yes, that also constitutes an approval. Totally. Throw that in there with everything else, just in case. Or if you're in Southern California, it's like, go for it, dude, and no way. Yeah. All right. So anyway, that's that is that. Now, it probably would be a good thing. This is a fairly basic workflow. I probably wouldn't be a bad idea for me to take you on a very quick tour of some not so basic workflows. So here is one. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. It's just going to illustrate two things. If you can't read this, don't worry. I'll explain the important bits. This is a workflow that bounces around between, it's for approving press releases, reviewing press releases. So it might be with the author, it might be with the manager, it might be with the legal department, and it's free to bounce around amongst them for a while. I want to focus on this last part, because here it's going to get published, and this workflow cops out and just says notify the publisher to publish it. We can do so much better than that. I'm going to make this workflow significantly more productive. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know something, let's publish this to our public-facing site. And in this particular case, our public-facing site we're grandfathered. It's still in Office 365. So here we go. Oh, that's my lazy approval.
So that was you responding to the email, the system picking it up and approving the task.
Yes. Lazy approval is not instantaneous, but most of the time a workflow process spends most of its time waiting for a human being to do something. The amount of extra time it takes having a machine to do some thinking, it's trivial. In production, in a demo, it can be risky, but in production, it's nothing. All right, so look, we're going to publish the file ourselves, but we're not only going to publish the file because we get back a URL. So why don't we tweet about that using our corporate Twitter account? And in fact, why don't we promote it on our company's Facebook wall? And for that matter, that's what's going to happen the moment we publish it on our site. But I want actual members of the press to know about this press release. They're not going to look at our site every day to see what's changed. That's an unrealistic expectation. I need to give this to our public relations people. And it's not an internal group, it's an external boutique. It's like 3 or 4 people. They're really good at what they do, but they don't use SharePoint. I think everyone should use SharePoint, but for those that won't, okay, fine. It just so happens that they have shared out a Dropbox folder with us, and that's okay. When we need to, we speak Dropbox. So I just, in a matter of seconds, changed this from a workflow that simply automated the review to something that automated the review, plus the publishing, plus the promotion, plus the PR interop. It's a fairly trivial thing to do because we have so many connectors to so many other things. We've got connectors to Dynamics CRM, to Salesforce. It's a long list. This is a workflow. I'm going to have to zoom out a long way for you to see it, and you're just going to have to trust me that this calculates a unique username for you. This is for onboarding a new employee. Creates an Active Directory account, adds you to the right groups, sets up an Exchange mailbox, sets up Skype for Business or Link or whatever version. Actually, we go all the way back to Office Communications Server. So whatever your infrastructure is, we love you. But we'll create an instant messaging account for you. We'll add some properties to your SharePoint user profile, and then we will wait until your start date. And on that day, email your manager your logon details. You do it too early, it's going to get lost. Send it right there at that morning. It's the perfect time to do it. Oh, by the way, this can also create Salesforce.com credentials, Yammer credentials. We're not limited to just stuff in the Office. Oh, set up a simultaneous Office 365 account. We could do that, but you're probably using DirSync or Azure AD at that point anyway, so it's not so necessary. But we could apply the right license to your account. We can do that inside of a workflow as well.
So one of the big challenges of user adoption is getting users to map their business processes into a SharePoint context. We give them SharePoint, but they don't know how to do SharePoint.
Okay, you are right. But what you're saying, that sort of implies users want to do all of this. They see the value in it. They're just having trouble doing it. I think that's true, but I actually think that users will learn a whole lot more and adopt a whole lot more when they see a payoff. And when they see the kinds of things they can build here and the types of processes they can automate, these kinds of things that we're talking about, IT is never going to build these for you. You're not going to have the budget to bring in outside developers to do a lot of these processes. Yes, you could use these tools to do bigger, more grandiose, more all-encompassing, more high-risk, high-payoff type processes at the same time, and people do. In fact, you personally work with this, I think, in some of your work, but mere mortals can use this to solve mere mortal-sized problems at the exact same time. It doesn't cost them extra to do so. And therefore, if suddenly every SharePoint site where you're putting in a document could not just, if you're putting a press release draft in a document library, and suddenly you go, wait, I don't need to go out and email a link to everybody to get comments on it. It'll just automatically solicit everything, and when it's done, it'll automatically publish itself. Suddenly that SharePoint document library and that SharePoint site becomes a much more attractive thing that people will want to use compared to a dead drop.
Fantastic.
I see we've got 2 minutes, right? Are there other questions that have been queued up?
I think we've covered the questions that users have asked, and I think we've also seen a way that we can increase user adoption by reducing the reliance on IT and putting the process of constructing the business solution in the hands of the people with the business problem.
There's an inflection point where IT either will be involved, whether you want them to be or not, or they should be involved. And it's okay. We're with you early at the far end where IT will never be involved, and we're with you at the high end where IT is absolutely involved. We love you wherever you are. Couple of quick things. It is entirely possible for you to get usage reports and understand where everything is. It's entirely possible to get statistics on every workflow that's running so you can attempt to improve those processes. And by the way, those mobile apps, the guys that build the mobile apps would kill me if I didn't point out that they did everything in their power to make sure that the mobile apps could show you all of your pending tasks, but also if you're going to do, they know you're using a phone, for example. So if I'm going to put in the inspection date and time, it actually defaults right now, but you're in a mobile app, we know where your location is. if we're looking for a local contact. And this even works offline if you've looked for people before.
It will look to your contacts.
And it'll remember the contacts that it's looked up before, so if you're offline and you look for Brett again, it'll find Brett again.
That's brilliant.
It does that for all kinds of things. Oh, and here, under new items, let's go ahead and add a new item. See what that means? That means,
Scan it.
yeah, do we have anything in this room with a barcode on it?
I'm afraid we don't. Well, that's all the time that we have.
That's
Jen,
all right.
back to you.
Yeah. Annotating graphic designs and all that other stuff. Look, it's a full-featured mobile app. Let's just leave it at that. Jen, thanks so much.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing with us today. We appreciate you guys coming on out. So keep your eye on IT Unity to find out all sorts of new content, as well as hanging out with us at the Dallas User Group. And we'll see you guys at next month's meeting. Thanks, guys.